Hey guys, Jesse here with another video from the Movement Athlete, and today we're going to be tackling the ring dips, why you should work on them, and how to achieve the proper ring dip. Today we'll be analyzing the ideal ring dip, the prerequisites necessary, and answering any questions that you have about dips. So in this video, we're going to tell you what the dip is, why you should train it, and what the prerequisites are before actually starting the progressions for the dip. So here we'll be showing you the gold standard technique for the ring dips and the prerequisites that you'll need to be able to do before actually training the progressions of the ring dips. So the ring dip is essentially a squat for your arms. If you think about a standing squat, your legs are straight, and then you eventually need to bend the hip joint and the knees. So this is similar in the fact that you're supporting on top of the rings with straight arms, and you're dipping down by bending the arms and then reversing it to come back up to the top. So very similar to the people that are familiar with the weight training world. It's basically a squat for the arms. So the ring dips are an important skill because you're going to be training a lot of bent arm and lock arm strength on an unstable surface. It's going to recruit more muscle fibers because, again, you need to adjust, you need to stabilize, and it's going to tax it more. And of course, this further leads into a lot of progressions on the rings, pressing movements, maybe through handstand, through planches, through different angles. So this is a good key initial movement on the rings once you can prop yourself up and learn how to stabilize and support. So the ring dips are going to be targeting the anterior deltoids, the pectoralis, triceps, the latissimus dorsi, the rhomboids, biceps, and its tendons. So you should train the ring dips because it's going to promote more shoulder stabilization on this surface. And of course, if you find that training the ring dips and then going back to a stable ground, it's going to be a lot easier because it's stable. There's going to be an increased motor unit recruitment in all the muscles due to the stabilization necessary. And it's going to be good for the progressions later on, like the muscle up. All right, so let's take a look at the rings dip with Jeremy. So he's first going to start up in the support position on the rings, and he's going to show us 3 reps. Simply dip down, reach the bottom, and then return back to the top with a lockout. So let's take a closer look at the rings dip and what we're looking for. So Jeremy, why don't you hop up on the rings? The initial position is the support position. As you can see from top to bottom, his head is in a neutral position looking forwards. His shoulders are depressed downwards and a little bit retracted. The arms are locked out. The rings are turned out. There's no contact with his body. His arms and body are away from each other. So this is the initial position. Then we're going to go ahead and do the dip. He's going to slowly lower down. And Jeremy, you can keep going a bunch of reps here. As you can see, we're trying to not have too much contact with the straps. The elbows are tracking backwards, and he's reaching about a 90-degree angle with the elbows and shoulders. It doesn't have to be that low. It can be about a 70 to 80 degree would be initial ideal angle. And he's keeping the ring still throughout, right? He's not shaking all over. He's got control throughout the duration of the ring dip, so that'll look good. So we get a lot of questions about how long does it take to achieve the ring dip, and I'm going to give you your favorite answer, and it depends, right? It depends on your current level of strength, consistency that you train in. Some people actually think the ring dip can be easier than on the parallel bars, but that would be because of technical errors of maybe leaning on the straps and getting that extra stability. So in a nutshell, it can take a couple months to years. It's just all about your current level of fitness and how often that you train the dips. So let's talk prerequisites for the rings dip. So the 2 main areas to focus on will be the shoulder range of motion and the stability of the rings. From there, it pans out and goes into more categories. So ideally, you want to be able to have a shoulder angle range. So going to about a 70 to 80 degree position in this angle here. You want to have good elbow preparation because you'll be supporting and bending the arms on the rings. So that'll withstand a particular amount of force. You want to be able to have pectorals that are flexible enough because if you're too tight, you won't be able to open up your chest to do the dip. We also want you to be able to hold yourself up in the lock arm position on top of the rings because that's the starting point of the dip. And then we want you to be able to be familiar with dips from the Movement Athlete app. It goes through a whole bunch of different progressions leading up to the initial one, which would be dips here on the parallel bars on a stable surface. The last item we want you to be able to do are ring push-ups. Your feet will be supported on the floor and you'll be getting more familiar with the bent and lock arm pushing phases on the rings. So the prerequisites that we have listed here are important because you need to initially have the range of motion to be able to go through a dip, because if you don't have that range, once you hop up on the rings, you're definitely not going to get into that position properly, or you might risk injury. You want to be able to efficiently learn the dip. So again, if you can put your body through the particular range of motion, if you've done it on a stable ground first, you need an appropriate level of strength to be able to do the dip, because it only gets harder from there when you're on top of the ring. It's important to train the movement pathway because you're going to be mimicking it on the rings. And again, it's really just to make sure that there's a smooth transition from stable to unstable surfaces, making sure that you're as injury-free as possible, and just learning this dip without wasting any time. So of course, many people ask, do I really need to do these prerequisites? And the short answer is, if you want the best dip, of course. You don't need to go through all of them exactly as they are, but what we've laid out will help you do an efficient dip well. And if you skip this, you'll be doing an inefficient dip. You won't be able to go low enough, or you'll be hurting your shoulders or anything else that can fall apart, technically from there, and it'll just take longer. So if you're coming into this and have some prerequisites and not others, have a suboptimal dip. So I like to tell my athletes, work on your weaknesses, right? If you're lacking flexibility and you're strong enough, it would be smart to work on the range of motion, because then you'll be able to get a fuller range, you'll get more out of your dips. So a poor level of prerequisites will just lead to poor dips down the road. So in the previous prerequisites or progressions leading up to this point, the movement pathways will be very similar. So if you were learning the dips on the parallel bars, or again, just a stable surface, it's got to follow the same movement pathway as it will on the rings, meaning that the elbows need to track backwards, you need to get low enough, you need to finish with a lockout. So you want to be able to accomplish that movement before coming to the rings. So now we'll be heading into the prerequisite exercises for the rings dip. And if you're familiar with our Movement Athlete app, it gives you a lot of progressions that will end up at the parallel bar dip, or in this case, box dips. We're going to be on stable ground is the point. This could be 2 chairs, 2 boxes, parallel bars, anything that's stable. So we'll be heading into the box dips in this case, and we want you to be able to do 8 to 12 dips. And so Jeremy, why don't you hop up? You're going to show us how to do the dips on stable ground. So again, he's going to start off in the support position with arms locked out. He's going to perform a few dips for us, and it's going to look exactly like it needs to on the rings, right? But he's stable here, right? The elbows are tracking backwards, the torso is upright, there's no forward lean, and he's performing dips on stable ground. The reason we want you to be able to do 8 to 12 dips is because that's the overlapping range of strength and hypertrophy. Now, if you can do the dips here, that means you have a decent level of strength to eventually advance into the rings itself, because like I said, it gets a lot harder once you're on the unstable surface. So this is definitely a prerequisite. You're showing you can do it on the stable surface, and then we'll have a few more for you, and eventually it'll end up on the rings itself. The second important prerequisite for the rings dip is going to be the support position on the ring. So Jeremy's going to hop up and show us what that looks like. You can see here from top to bottom, his head is neutral, his shoulders are depressed and a little retracted, his arms are locked out, the rings are further away from his body, keeping the body as straight as possible. So we want you to be able to hold this for about at least 13 seconds. I'm putting 13 to 18 seconds, and the reason for that is because you don't want to operate at a 1 rep max, right? If you can only hold this for about 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you're not going to be able to be on the rings for long enough to do the dips, and the dips will take several seconds. So being able to hold a good support position between 13 and 18 seconds would be ideal before starting to head into the actual dips itself. So thanks for showing us the support position. So the reason that the support position is so important on the rings is because that's where the skill starts. he needs to start off in a stable support position on the rings before lowering and doing the skill. If you're starting off in an unstable support position, you've already started doing the skill incorrectly. So you need that stability in that position. And again, to translate it into the weight training world, just thinking about standing before a squat. If you can't even stand and then you go and do a squat, it's going to break down immediately. So just trying to relate the two together. Support position is like standing. You want that stable before you do the dip. So looking at prerequisite number 3, it's going to be the ring push-ups to help you get the ring dips. So Jeremy starts off in the lock arm position in support and is basically performing the push-up as he would on the floor. So you can see he's keeping the body line straight, neutral head. He's finishing the lockout on each rep, and he's trying to have the elbows track backwards instead of sidewards. So it's going to follow all the same ideal positions of a push-up, right? You don't want to be sagging in the shoulders. You don't want to be arching or piking. Finishing the lockout is very important. It's also keeping the rings stable, right? If he was new to this, maybe the rings would be shaking all over the place and the technique would break down quite soon. So we can also look at a bent-legged version, right? We can regress this further backwards and do this on the knees as well. So we can further regress the ring push-ups by simply going on the knees. So you could be on a low set of floor rings, or in this case, we've elevated the box for him to be leaning onto, so he's more in line with the rings for the push-up. So you can see he's gonna follow the same technique, right? Hip angle is straight, even though he's on his knees. Neutral head, going through the bent arm and lock arm phases. He's controlled, he's turning the rings out, and he's not pressing against his body during the push-ups. So for the rings push-ups, we're looking for 8 to 12 reps because that is the overlapping range of strength and hypertrophy, and this is showing you have enough strength to move on to the progressions of the rings dip. So that's an overview of the prerequisites before heading into the actual ring dip progressions. We'd like you to be able to do what we showed you here, and we spoke about shoulder range of motion, elbow preparation, and of course the pecs being flexible enough to go through the range, and then a few exercises to be able to do before heading into the rings dips, which we'll show you soon. Real quick, if you guys liked what you saw here, please click the link in the description below. It'll take you to a free course. It's got a lot of guides, challenges, and resources for how to learn more calisthenic and bodyweight training skills. It's gonna help you get stronger, fitter, more mobile, happier, and it'll help you achieve your fitness goals. So see you inside.